We went to look for tickets and there was a big line, so I thought, are we in the right line? Let's go to the info center.
Filipino fans book every DC Open ticket for Alex Eala, one name that was not even on the marketing poster. That is the arithmetic behind a headline nobody in the WTA's Manhattan offices wanted to read this week. Filipino fans book every DC Open ticket for Alex Eala. The Mubadala City DC Open was already almost gone when the tournament confirmed her entry. And what the Filipino community did to the last 3% of that ticket inventory, the group chats, the resale scrambles, the SeatGeek refresh at 2 in the morning, is the moment the tour can no longer pretend it did not see coming. If you have been following Alex Eala's rise since Court 6 in Melbourne, hit subscribe right now. This channel is tracking every scheduling decision, every court assignment, every ticket count from Washington to Flushing Meadows. Rewind 5 days before the DC ticket story broke. July 6th, 2026, Centre Court, Wimbledon. Alex Eala walks off after a 6-4, 4-6, 6-3 loss to Jasmine Paolini.
Jasmine Paolini is back in the quarterfinals.
6-4, 4-6.
But she is walking off as the 20-year-old who, 48 hours earlier, had just dethroned defending champion Iga Swiatek. 3 weeks of scheduled rest were supposed to follow. Then the DC Open, her return tournament, flipped the entire story. Here is what the tour did on July 2nd. The DC Open released its promotional field. Elena Svitolina headlined, then Marta Kostyuk, then Naomi Osaka, then Venus Williams. Eala's name landed 5th, filed under Rising Filipina Star language. 9 days later, DC Open chairman Mark Ein was on WTOP describing ticket availability as very scarce. 97% sold out. The last seats vanishing through Filipino community Facebook groups and SeatGeek resale threads faster than the tournament could update its own graphics. This is the pattern the WTA can no longer ignore. For over a year now, the tour and its partners have consistently underplanned for the crowds Alex Eala generates, treating a phenomenon like a bonus, then getting outmaneuvered by her own audience. The DC Open is not the first time. It is only the loudest. Start with the receipt nobody at the WTA wants framed on a wall. January 2026. Australian Open, Round 1. Eala versus Alicia Parks. Assigned to Court 6, a side court barely large enough to hold a queue, let alone a movement. Reddit's tennis community documented what they called an insane queue to access Court 6. Yahoo Sports ran the headline, "Scheduling Blunder Leaves Crowd in Chaos Front Office Sports," confirmed some fans were forced to stand. That is what happens when you schedule a phenomenon like a first-rounder. Cut to 2 months later. Indian Wells, March 2026, front office. Sports reporters on the ground filed a line that should have been printed on WTA boardroom coffee mugs. The crowds mobbing Eala's practice sessions were comparable to those trailing Alcaraz, Sinner, and Venus Williams, while Zverev and Fritz on adjacent courts could only reel in a handful of fans. The 31st ranked player in the world was outdrawing top 10 men at practice. That is not fandom, that is gravity. And Indian Wells figured it out. Philippe Dor, a BNP Paribas Open executive, set it into a live microphone. "We love every minute of it. We benefit from it. We promote it." 12 words. A tournament openly bragging about the same demand the Australian Open had banished to a side court 8 weeks earlier. 2 institutions, same player, opposite intelligence. Then Wimbledon 2026 delivered the moment that made all of it undeniable. July 4th, Court 1. Alex Eala 7-6 in a tiebreak that stretched to 11-9, then 6-2, over Iga Swiatek. The defending champion, the 3-time French Open winner, gone. And the player the Australian Open had tucked into Court 6 in January was suddenly the reason Centre Court had to be reshuffled. For every Filipino who stayed up past midnight to watch that scoreline, this is the part worth sitting with. You were not overreacting when you called her generational a year ago. You were not exaggerating when you told co-workers to remember the name. The tournaments that dismissed her as a bracket filler are the ones now scrambling to catch up to what the community in Manila, in Dubai, in Daly City, in Alexandria, Virginia, saw before the rankings ever caught up. Which brings us back to the July 3rd phone call between Chairman Mark Ein and WTOP. 97% sold out. Very scarce. Filipino diaspora Facebook pages. Coordinating group buys. Resale listings climbing. And the DC Open like the 5th largest professional tennis event in the United States, bracing for what is about to look less like a WTA 500 and more, like a Filipino home match staged inside the American capital. If the tour still needed a voice to translate what is happening, it already received one, 6 months ago from the loudest microphone the sport has. Novak Djokovic, 24 Grand Slam titles, all-time slam leader, more weeks at world number 1 than anyone in ATP history. A man who has watched the tour manufacture and discard 2 decades of next big things and knows the difference between a marketing push and a genuine cultural pull. In January 2026, speaking to ABS-CBN about the crowd swarming Eala's matches, Djokovic called it a good problem to have. Read that in the context of the last 12 months, when the greatest player of his generation looks at a 20-year-old's fan base and identifies it as a problem worth having. The WTA's tournament directors do not get to keep calling it a surprise. Djokovic named the phenomenon in one sentence. The tour has spent 6 months proving it did not listen. The DC Open is not a one-off headache. It is a preview of an entire hardcourt summer being rewritten in real time. The tail-end demand Eala creates does not stop in Washington. On August 1st, the National Bank Open opens in Toronto, a city with one of the largest Filipino-Canadian populations on the continent. Then the Cincinnati Open. Then the U.S. Open in late August, where Eala's projected seeding after Wimbledon is around number 28. 3 tournaments, 3 chances for the WTA to preempt a Court 6 repeat, or 3 chances to trip over the same rake. And the demographic math underneath all of this is not returning to zero. The Philippines is a basketball-first nation of 115 million people being converted to tennis month by month, match by match. The diaspora threaded through California, Nevada, Virginia, Ontario, and the Gulf is a market the WTA has never had commercial access to before. Filipino sports journalist T.J. Manadag put it plainly to Front Office Sports. The country has been hungry for the next Manny Pacquiao. When Pacquiao was at his peak, life stopped. Roads emptied, everyone watched. That is the ceiling of what Eala is unlocking. And the DC Open ticket scramble is what the floor looks like. None of this arrives without cost. On center court, 48 hours after burying Świątek, Eala's serve wobbled. She wore preventive tape on her left forearm. Her words, "More preventive than anything. It's been a long season." Paolini took the 3rd set 6-3. Then Eala sat down in the press room and delivered the line that reframes this entire story. If I'm able to approach those situations with bravery, with a steady mind, and with intensity, then I'm able to look back and feel no regret. She added something quieter and just as sharp, that everyone has days where they do not play their best tennis, and she understands that is part of the job. The WTA may spend this summer feeling regret. Alex Eala already told the world in her own voice that she never will. Court 6 in January. Practice courts outdrawing top 10 men in March. Świątek falling in July. Mark Ein on the radio calling ticket availability very scarce. Djokovic naming the problem before the tour was willing to admit it existed. And a 20-year-old walking off center court refusing to hand a single second of her career over to regret. The WTA did not sell out the DC Open. Filipino fans did. 1 resale ticket, 1 group chat, 1 refresh at a time. And every seat this tour ever assigned to Alex Eala on the wrong court is coming back to it now at market rate with interest. So here is the question worth staking your claim on in the comments. When the U.S. Open draw is released in August, Does the WTA finally hand Eala a night session Asha Stadium slot, or does it get caught flat-footed one more time and shove her onto court 17 while the queue wraps around the grounds? Make your prediction now, before the seedings drop. If you called the Świątek upset before the tiebreak ended, if you spotted this movement while court 6 was still trending, this is where the receipts get filed. Subscribe and hold the tour accountable with us, because the next time a tournament underestimates Alex Eala, we are going to have the story queued up before the press. Release